The silk of Viviana's blouse caught on the corner of Marcus Volkov's mahogany desk as she reached across to set down his morning espresso, and for one heart-stopping moment, the fabric pulled tight against her wrist. She yanked her arm back so fast that the coffee sloshed over the rim, dark droplets spattering across the financial reports she'd spent all night preparing. "Careful." His voice cut through the morning silence of his office like a blade through water, quiet but impossible to ignore. Viviana's pulse hammered against her throat as she grabbed the stack of papers, dabbing at them with her sleeve before the liquid could soak through. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Volkov. I'll reprint these right away. Leave them." Marcus didn't look up from his phone, but she felt the weight of his attention anyway. The way you feel a storm building even when the sky is still clear. "Sit." She'd been working as his personal assistant for 3 months now, ever since her father's gambling debts had landed him in a hospital bed and her family on the wrong side of the Volkov family's patience. The deal had been simple. She'd work off what was owed, and her father would keep all his fingers. Maybe even his life. 3 months of arriving before dawn and leaving after dark. 3 months of long sleeves in the height of summer, even when the August heat turned his penthouse office into a greenhouse. 3 months of Marcus Volkov's ice-gray eyes following her movements with an intensity that made her skin feel too tight. She lowered herself into the leather chair across from his desk, folding her hands in her lap. Fingers hidden beneath the cuffs of her cream-colored blouse. "The Castellano meeting," he said, finally setting his phone down. "You scheduled it for Thursday." "Yes, sir. At the warehouse on 5th, like you requested." "Change it." Viviana pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "Of course. What day works better?" "The same day, different location." He leaned back in his chair, and now those eyes were fully on her, glacial and unreadable. "The restaurant, Giordano's. I want witnesses." Her fingers froze mid-swipe. Everyone who worked for the Volkov family knew what it meant when Marcus chose a public venue for a business meeting. It meant he expected trouble. It meant he wanted evidence that whatever happened in front of enough people that even the police couldn't pretend not to notice. Should I arrange for additional security?" "I'll handle security." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with movements so precise they could have been choreographed. "You'll be there?" "Sir?" "At the meeting. With me." The tablet nearly slipped from her grasp. "Mr. Volkov, I don't think that's... I'm just an assistant. The Castellanos won't want... I don't particularly care what the Castellanos want." He moved around the desk with that predatory grace that made him seem larger than his already impressive 6'3" frame. "You know my schedule better than anyone. You've organized every meeting, every transaction, every movement I've made for 3 months. If something happens to me, you're the only person who could piece together where the bodies are buried." Her mouth went dry. "Nothing's going to happen to you." "Probably not." He stopped in front of her chair, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her rent. "But I've stayed alive this long by planning for every contingency. Starting Thursday, you're one of them." She should have been terrified. She was terrified. But underneath the fear was something else. Something that fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird every time he looked at her like this. Like she mattered. Like she was more than just the collateral damage of her father's mistakes. "I understand," she whispered. His eyes dropped to her hands, still folded in her lap, sleeves pulled down past her wrists. She saw his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "Why do you always do that?" "Do what?" "The long sleeves. It's 93 degrees outside." Her heart stopped. Actually stopped. "I run cold." Viviana. Her name in his mouth sounded like a secret. Like a weapon. "I've built an empire by reading people. And you're hiding something." "I'm not..." He reached down and she flinched before his fingers even made contact. The movement was tiny, involuntary. But in the sudden electric silence between them, it might as well have been a scream. Marcus went very still. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped into a register she'd never heard before. something cold and deadly that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "Who touched you?" "No one. I startled. I'm sorry." "Stand up." It wasn't a request. Viviana rose on shaking legs. The tablet clutched against her chest like a shield. Marcus circled around behind her, and every instinct screamed at her to run, to bolt for the door, to do anything except stand here while the most dangerous man in the city studied her like a puzzle he intended to solve. "Roll up your sleeves." "Mr. Volkov." That wasn't a suggestion. His breath ghosted across her ear, and she felt rather than saw him move closer. "Roll them up, or I'll do it for you." Her hands trembled as she set the tablet down on his desk. The fabric whispered against her skin as she began to fold back the left cuff. Once, twice, revealing the pale underside of her forearm inch by terrible inch. The bruises had faded to a sickly yellow-green, but they were still visible. 5 distinct oval marks, unmistakably fingerprints, wrapped around her wrist like a bracelet. The right arm was worse. Those bruises were newer, darker, purple-black shadows that tracked from wrist to elbow. She heard Marcus's sharp intake of breath behind her. "Don't." She squeezed her eyes shut, unable to bear whatever expression was on his face. "Please don't ask. I can't. I need this job. I need to pay off my father's debt, and if you fire me—" "Fire you?" His voice cracked like a whip. "Viviana, look at me." She turned slowly, and what she saw in his face made her breath catch. She'd seen Marcus angry before, had watched him reduce grown men to stammering apologies with nothing but a look. But this was different. This was rage, pure and cold and utterly controlled, burning behind his eyes like ice on fire. "Who did this?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." He reached out, and this time she didn't flinch as his fingers closed around her wrist. Not gripping, just holding, his thumb tracing the edge of the bruises with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man like him. "Give me a name." She couldn't. If she told him about Victor, about Marcus's own cousin who'd cornered her in the parking garage last week, about the things he'd said, the way he'd grabbed her when she tried to leave, if she told him that, someone would die. And as much as Victor terrified her, she wasn't sure she could live with being the reason for anyone's death. "I can't. Can't or won't. Both." Her voice broke on the word. "Please, Mr. Volkov, just let it go." For a long moment he said nothing, just stood there holding her wrist like it was made of spun glass. Then he released her and pulled out his phone, thumb moving across the screen with swift precision. "What are you doing?" "Calling a doctor." "I'm fine. They're just bruises." "You're not fine." He didn't look up from his phone. "And when I find out who did this, and I will find out, Viviana, make no mistake about that, I'm going to need photographic evidence, for legal purposes. Legal purposes." He finally met her eyes, and what she saw there sent a chill racing down her spine. "So there's a record, before he disappears." The doctor arrived within the hour, a small, efficient woman named Dr. Chen, who asked no questions and took dozens of photographs from every angle. She examined Viviana's wrists, her arms, even made her remove her shoes to check her ankles. When she finished, she handed Marcus a flash drive and left as quietly as she'd come. Viviana stood by the window, staring down at the city 40 stories below, arms wrapped around herself. Behind her, she heard Marcus moving around the office, the clink of glass, the sound of liquid being poured. Then he was beside her, pressing a tumbler of amber liquid into her hands. "Drink." She took a sip and coughed as the whiskey burned down her throat. "I don't usually—" "I know. Drink it anyway." She did, feeling the warmth spread through her chest, loosening the knot of tension that had been coiled there since the moment he'd noticed her sleeves. When the glass was empty, he took it from her and set it aside, then shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was warm from his body heat and smelled like him, and she had to fight the sudden, insane urge to bury her face in the fabric. "You're going to tell me what happened," he said. "Not because I'm your boss. Because someone hurt you, and I can make sure they never get the chance to do it again." "Why do you care?" The whiskey had loosened her tongue, made her brave, or maybe just reckless. "I'm nobody. I'm just the girl working off her father's debts." Marcus turned her to face him, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender that tears sprang to her eyes before she could stop them. "You think I let just anyone organize my life?" His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, catching a tear before it could fall. "You think I trust just anyone with the kind of information you have access to? I could have sent any number of people to handle your father's situation. I chose to keep you close. Do you know why?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Because the first time I saw you standing in that hospital room telling me you'd do anything to save your father, I saw something I don't see often." His eyes searched hers, intense and unguarded. Loyalty. Real loyalty. The kind that can't be bought or beaten into someone. And because every time you look at me, you see a man, not a monster. Even though you know exactly what I am, what I do. "Mr. Volkov." "Marcus." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "When we're alone, I want you to call me Marcus." Marcus. His name felt dangerous in her mouth. Intimate. "I can't drag you into this. Victor is your cousin. Your family." She felt him go rigid under her hands, watched his expression shift from tender to murderous in the space of a heartbeat. "Victor." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. And something in her chest loosened at finally sharing the weight of it. "He cornered me in the parking garage, said things, grabbed me when I tried to leave. I fought him off, but nothing." Marcus's hands dropped from her face, curling into fists at his sides. "He put his hands on you. He hurt you. He's dead. You can't just kill your own cousin." "Watch me." "Marcus, no." He stalked back to his desk, every movement radiating barely leashed violence. "No, you don't get to defend him. You don't get to protect him. He touched what's mine, and there are consequences for that." The words hung in the air between them, heavy, with meaning. What's mine? As if she belonged to him. As if she was something precious that he had the right to guard. She should have been angry. Should have told him she wasn't property to be claimed. But instead, warmth bloomed in her chest, dangerous and intoxicating. "I'm not yours," she said, but even to her own ears it sounded like a question. Marcus looked up from his phone, and the expression on his face made her knees weak. "Aren't you?" Before she could answer, the office door burst open. Victor stood in the doorway, his face flushed, his eyes bright with some combination of anger and something darker. He'd clearly been drinking. She could smell the vodka from across the room. "There you are." His words slurred slightly as he pointed at Viviana. "Been looking everywhere for you, sweetheart. We have unfinished business." Marcus moved. One moment he was behind his desk, the next he was between Victor and Viviana, a wall of controlled fury. "Get out. Come on, cousin." Victor's grin was ugly. "Don't tell me you actually care about this little—" He didn't get to finish the sentence. Marcus's fist connected with Victor's jaw with a crack that echoed through the office like a gunshot. Victor went down hard, blood streaming from his split lip. "Get up," Marcus said quietly. "I want you conscious for this." Victor struggled to his feet, one hand pressed to his face. "You're going to hit me? Over some girl? She's nothing. Just the daughter of a degenerate gambler who—" The second punch doubled Victor over. The third put him back on the floor. "You're right," Marcus said, his voice deadly calm as he stood over his cousin. "I am going to hit you. And when I'm done, you're going to leave this city. You're going to drain your accounts, pack your things, and disappear. If I ever hear that you've come within 100 miles of here, if I ever hear that you've so much as spoken her name, I will find you. And what I do to you will make this feel like a massage." "She's just—" Marcus grabbed Victor by the collar, hauling him up until they were eye to eye. "She's mine, my assistant, under my protection. And you put your hands on her. You marked her. His voice dropped even lower. Do you have any idea what I do to people who damage my property? Marcus. Viviana's voice cut through the testosterone-thick air. Stop, please. He turned to look at her, and for a moment she thought he might not listen. Then, slowly, he released Victor, letting him crumple back to the floor. You have 24 hours, Marcus said. Be grateful she asked me to stop. Otherwise, you'd be leaving in pieces. 2 of Marcus's men appeared in the doorway. They must have been waiting in the hall. They hauled Victor to his feet and dragged him out, leaving a small trail of blood drops on the pristine white carpet. The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed felt like the aftermath of an explosion. You shouldn't have done that, Viviana whispered. He's your family. You're my family. Marcus crossed back to her, and there was something raw in his expression now, something vulnerable beneath the violence. More than he ever was. More than most of the people who share my blood. They're connections of necessity. He stopped, jaw working as if the words were fighting their way out. You're a choice. A choice? I didn't have to keep you. Could have assigned someone else to your father's debt. Could have put you in any number of positions that didn't involve seeing me every day, knowing my schedule, my business, my life. His hands came up to frame her face again, forcing her to meet his eyes. But I wanted you here. Close. Where I could see you. Where you could what? Protect you. The words came out fierce, almost angry. Keep you safe. Make sure no one ever hurt you again. Why? She was crying now, couldn't seem to stop the tears even though she hated showing this weakness. Why do you care so much? Because when I look at you, I see home. His thumbs brushed away her tears with infinite gentleness. Because you make me want to be something other than what I am. Because the thought of anyone hurting you makes me want to burn the whole world down. He pressed his forehead to hers, his breath warm against her lips. Because I'm falling in love with you, Viviana. Have been since the first day you walked into this office and told me exactly how much your father owed. Down to the last dollar, like you were already planning how to pay every penny back yourself. Her breath caught. Marcus, you don't have to say anything. I know what I am, what I do. I know I have no right to feel this way about you, no right to want you the way I want you. But I can't help it. And I can't... His voice cracked, just slightly. I can't stand the thought of you being hurt. Not on my watch. Not ever. She kissed him. Didn't plan it. Didn't think about it. Just rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his, swallowing his surprised intake of breath. For a moment, he went absolutely still. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with a hunger that made her head spin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had gone dark. Viviana, he said, her name a prayer and a warning all at once. If we do this, there's no going back. You understand that? I don't share. I don't let go. You'd be mine, completely. I'm already yours. The truth of it settled into her bones as she said it. Have been for a while now. Then marry me. She blinked, certain she'd misheard. What? Marry me. He pulled back just enough to look at her properly, and there was no hesitation in his face, no doubt. Not because of your father's debt. That's paid, by the way. I settled it last month. Not because I need an assistant, though you're the best I've ever had. Marry me because I love you. Because I want to wake up next to you every morning and know that you're safe, that you're mine, legally and completely, in a way that even my enemies won't dare to challenge. That's crazy. We've only known each other 3 months. I knew the first week. His hands tightened on her waist. I knew every time I found excuses to keep you late, every time I caught myself watching you work, every time you smiled at something on your computer screen, and I wanted to know what made you happy. I've known, Viviana. The only question is whether you feel the same. Did she? She searched her heart and found the answer waiting there, obvious and terrifying, and absolutely certain. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll marry you." The smile that broke across his face transformed him, made him look younger, less dangerous, almost boyish in his joy. He kissed her again, deeper this time, lifting her until her feet left the floor, and she had no choice but to wrap her arms around his neck and hold on. When he set her down, she was dizzy, drunk on him and the impossibility of this moment. "There's something I need to do first," she said. "My father. I need to talk to him. He needs to know that we're—" "Of course." Marcus smoothed her hair back from her face with infinite tenderness. "I'll come with you." "You don't have to. I'm coming with you. If I'm going to marry you, I should probably formally ask your father for permission, even if the answer won't change my plans." They found her father in his apartment, the same cramped two-bedroom where Viviana had grown up. He was watching television when they arrived, his right hand still bandaged from where one of his fingers had been broken as a warning. When he opened the door and saw Marcus standing there, all the color drained from his face. "Mr. Volkov, I swear I haven't—" "Relax, Joseph." Marcus's voice was calm, almost gentle. "I'm not here about the debt. It's been settled." Her father's eyes went to Viviana, confused and frightened. "Viv? What's going on?" "Dad." She took Marcus's hand, threading their fingers together. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen before you say anything." Over the next 20 minutes, she explained everything. The job, the 3 months of working for Marcus, Victor and what he'd done, the bruises, and finally, impossibly, the proposal. Her father listened in silence, his expression shifting from fear to shock to something that might have been pride. When she finished, he looked at Marcus for a long moment. "You love her?" "Yes." "You'll take care of her? Protect her?" "With my life." "And the debt? That's really settled?" "Completely. Consider it a wedding gift." Marcus squeezed Viviana's hand. "I'm not asking you for her hand, Joseph. She's not yours to give. But I am asking for your blessing, because she loves you, and your approval matters to her." Her father's eyes filled with tears. "I thought I'd ruined her life. When I couldn't pay, when they came for me, all I could think about was that I'd destroyed her future." "You didn't ruin anything, Dad." Viviana moved to hug him, careful of his bandaged hand. "I found exactly where I needed to be. Then, yes." Her father pulled back to look at Marcus. "You have my blessing. But if you ever hurt her, I won't." There was absolute certainty in Marcus's voice. "I'd sooner hurt myself." They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the same church where Viviana had been baptized. She wore a dress of ivory silk with long lace sleeves that covered her arms completely, not to hide bruises anymore, but as a reminder of where they'd started, of the scars that had led them here. When Marcus slid the ring onto her finger, his hands were steady, his eyes locked on hers like she was the only person in the room, the only person in his world. "I promise," he said, voice low enough that only she could hear, "that no one will ever hurt you again, that you'll never have to hide. That I will spend every day of my life making sure you know how precious you are." "I promise," she whispered back, "that I'll see you for who you really are. Not the monster, not the boss, just Marcus, the man I love." The kiss that sealed their vows was soft and sweet and filled with promise. That evening at the reception held in the ballroom of Marcus's hotel, Viviana found herself on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. Marcus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. "Having second thoughts?" he murmured against her ear. "Not even close." She turned in his arms, smiling up at him. "Though I should probably warn you, I have no idea how to be a mob boss's wife." "Then it's a good thing you're not." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. "You're Viviana Volkova, my partner, my equal. The woman who makes me want to be better than I am. You're already better than you think. She reached up to cup his face, thumb tracing the line of his jaw. You just needed someone to see it. I needed you. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm, then her wrist, right over the place where Victor's bruises had been. The marks were gone now, faded completely, but Marcus traced the spot anyway, as if he could still see them. As if he was rewriting the story written on her skin. Every day, every moment, for the rest of my life. Music drifted out from the ballroom, their song, the one they'd chosen for their first dance. Marcus pulled her close, swaying with her there on the balcony under the stars, and Viviana thought about all the choices that had led them to this moment. Her father's debts, her decision to offer herself in payment, the long sleeves she'd worn to hide her pain, and Marcus, always Marcus, the dangerous man who'd seen past her fear to the person underneath, who'd made her safety his mission, who'd looked at her bruises and chosen her over blood, over family, over everything. Thank you, she whispered against his shoulder. For what? For seeing me, for protecting me, for loving me enough to cut away everything I was hiding behind. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and in his eyes, she saw her whole future written. I'll always cut away anything that hurts you, Viviana, even if it's the walls you built to keep yourself safe, because you don't need them anymore. He kissed her, soft and deep and claiming, You have me now, and I'm never letting go. The music swelled. The city glittered below them, and Viviana Volkova, formerly nobody, formerly collateral, formerly a girl in long sleeves hiding her pain, danced with her husband and knew with absolute certainty that she was finally, truly, home. The call came 6 months into their marriage, at 3 a.m. Viviana woke to Marcus's phone vibrating against the nightstand, the blue light cutting through the darkness of their bedroom. She felt him tense beside her, felt the moment his body went from relaxed and warm to coiled and ready. What is it? She whispered as he answered. His face in the phone's glow was carved from stone. When? A pause. How many? Another pause, longer this time. I'm on my way. He was out of bed before she could ask, pulling on clothes with swift efficiency. Viviana sat up, heart already racing. Marcus, what's wrong? There's been an incident at the port warehouse, Castellano's men. He holstered his gun with movements so practiced they were almost casual. I need to handle this. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. He turned to look at her, and his expression was the one he wore in business meetings, cold, distant, the man the world saw when they looked at Marcus Volkov. Stay here. Stay safe. We're partners, remember? You said equal. You said, Viviana. He crossed back to the bed, framing her face in his hands. This isn't a negotiation. These men are dangerous. They're armed, and if they're at the warehouse, they're sending a message. I can't do what needs to be done if I'm worried about protecting you. Then teach me to protect myself. She grabbed his wrists, holding his hands against her face. You can't lock me away every time there's danger. That's not a marriage. That's a prison. Something flickered in his eyes. Frustration, maybe, or fear. I can't lose you. You won't, but you need to trust me. She kissed his palm, the gesture deliberate, a mirror of what he'd done to her wrists 1,000 times since their wedding. Please. For a long moment he stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. You stay in the car. You don't get out unless I tell you to, and if things go wrong, you drive away and you don't look back. Promise me. I promise. It was a lie, and they both knew it. The warehouse loomed against the pre-dawn sky like a sleeping giant, all steel and shadow and silence. Marcus's driver pulled the car around to the side entrance, and Viviana could see lights moving inside through the high windows. Flashlights, sweeping back and forth in patterns that felt wrong, methodical. They're searching for something, Marcus said quietly. He pulled his phone out, typed something quickly, then pocketed it again. My men are 5 minutes out. What are they looking for? Probably the ledgers, records of shipments, payments, names. He checked his gun, expression grim. Proof of everything we've been moving through here for the past 3 years. If Castellano gets those books, half the city goes down, including people who've done nothing wrong except work for the wrong company. Where are they? He looked at her sharply. Where are what? The ledgers. Where are they, really? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. In our home office, in the safe behind the painting of the Venice canals, which you would know, since you're the one who organized the filing system. She would have laughed if the situation wasn't so tense. So they're searching for something that isn't there. Yes, but they don't know that, which means they'll tear the place apart looking, and by the time they realize they've been played. He stopped mid-sentence, eyes narrowing at something through the windshield. Viviana followed his gaze and felt her blood turn to ice. A woman was being dragged out of the warehouse by 2 men, her hands bound, her mouth gagged. Even in the dim light, Viviana could see the terror in her eyes, the way she struggled against her captors. She was young, maybe early 20s, with dark hair that fell loose around her shoulders. Who is that? Viviana whispered. Marcus's jaw clenched. Elena Castellano. Dominic's daughter. He was already reaching for the door handle. Wait. Viviana grabbed his arm. If that's his daughter, why are his men? Those aren't his men. Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. Look at their patches. She looked. The men wore jackets with emblems she didn't recognize, a red serpent coiled around a dagger. Not the Castellano family symbol. Not Marcus's either. Russo, Marcus breathed. Antonio Russo. He's trying to start a war. By kidnapping Castellano's daughter and making it look like you did it. Smart girl. He checked his gun again. Which means I need to get her out of here before Castellano's people show up and find her on my property. Your men are 5 minutes away. Can't you wait? The sound of an engine roaring to life cut her off. The men were loading Elena into a van, moving fast now. Their sweeping search apparently abandoned. In seconds, they'd be gone, and with them any chance of proving Marcus's innocence. Marcus kicked open his door. Stay in the car. But Viviana was already moving, her own door opening before she could think about what she was doing. She'd seen where they were taking Elena, had seen the way they'd shoved her into the back of the van, had seen the 3rd man climb in after her while the other 2 got in the cab. 3 men, 1 van, and a hostage who couldn't scream for help. Viviana, no! She was already running, sprinting across the parking lot with her heart in her throat, and Marcus's shouts behind her. The van's back doors were still open. They'd been in too much of a hurry to secure them properly, and she could see Elena inside, struggling against her bonds while the man guarding her laughed. The doors started to swing closed. Viviana jumped. She caught the edge of one door, momentum carrying her forward even as the van started to move. For one terrible moment she hung there, feet dragging against asphalt, arms screaming with the effort of holding on. Then hands grabbed her, Elena's guard, hauling her up and into the van with a curse. Got us a bonus! He shouted toward the front. The van swerved hard, and Viviana crashed into the metal wall, stars exploding across her vision. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Marcus screaming her name, heard gunshots. His, firing at the tires maybe, trying to stop them. But the van was already accelerating, already putting distance between them. The guard grabbed Viviana by the hair, yanking her head back. Well, Mrs. Volkov herself. Boss is going to love this. Elena's eyes met hers across the dim interior of the van, and Viviana saw recognition there, and hope, and terrible fear. The younger woman was shaking, tears streaming down her face around the gag. Viviana's mind raced. She was unarmed, untrained, trapped in a moving vehicle with a man twice her size and no way out. Marcus would come for her. She knew that with absolute certainty. But by the time he tracked them down, it might be too late. So she did the only thing she could think of. She went limp. The guard, still gripping her hair, wasn't expecting the sudden dead weight. He stumbled, his hold loosening just slightly, and Viviana twisted, bringing her elbow up hard into his throat. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't even particularly effective. But it surprised him, made him cough and release her, and that was enough. She launched herself at Elena, fingers working frantically at the ropes around the other woman's wrists. The knots were tight, complex, but Viviana had spent 6 months organizing Marcus's life, and that included learning every knot used in his shipping business. Her fingers found the pattern, pulled the right loops, and suddenly Elena's hands were free. The guard recovered, reaching for them with a snarl. Elena ripped the gag from her mouth and screamed, not a scream of fear, but of rage. She grabbed something from the van floor, a crowbar left there by whoever had used this vehicle last, and swung it with all her strength. The guard went down hard. "The doors?" Viviana gasped. "Can you—" Elena was already moving, scrambling over the unconscious man to reach the back doors. They burst open, wind and road noise screaming into the van. The pavement rushed past beneath them, dark and deadly. "We have to jump!" Elena shouted over the noise. "We're going too fast! Better than wherever they're taking us!" The van swerved again, harder this time. The driver must have realized something was wrong. The movement threw both women toward the open doors, toward the edge of nothing. Elena grabbed Viviana's hand. "On 3. On 3. They never got to 3. The van swerved again, and suddenly they were falling, tumbling, the world spinning in a chaos of asphalt and pain, and Elena's hand tight in hers. They hit the road rolling, and Viviana felt her shoulder explode with agony, felt skin tear from her palms and knees, felt her teeth clack together hard enough to draw blood. Then they were still, lying in the middle of the road, and the van's taillights were disappearing into the distance. "Are you alive?" Elena coughed. "I think so." Everything hurt, but Viviana could move her fingers, her toes. Nothing broken, just bruised and bleeding, and so lucky. "You?" "Yeah, thanks to you." Elena sat up slowly, wincing. "You're insane, you know that? Jumping into a moving vehicle?" "Not my smartest moment," Viviana admitted. The sound of an engine made them both freeze. But this time, when Viviana turned her head, she saw Marcus's car speeding toward them, saw him nearly throw it into park before he was out and running, his face white with terror. "Viviana!" He dropped to his knees beside her, hands running over her body, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Talk to me. Tell me you're okay." "I'm okay." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "We're both okay." Marcus pulled her against him, and she felt the tremor in his hands, felt the way he buried his face in her hair like he was trying to convince himself she was real. "Don't ever do that again. Don't ever, I thought, when I saw you jump." "I know. I'm sorry." She wrapped her arms around him, ignoring the screaming pain in her shoulder. "But we couldn't let them take her." Marcus pulled back, seeming to see Elena for the first time. The younger woman was sitting on the asphalt, looking shell-shocked and bruised but alive. He helped her to her feet with surprising gentleness. "Elena Castellano?" "Yes, you're Marcus Volkov." She straightened despite her obvious pain. "My father thinks you kidnapped me." "I didn't." "I know. I saw the patches. Russo's men." She glanced at Viviana, and something like respect crossed her face. "Your wife saved my life." "She has a habit of that." Marcus kept one arm around Viviana, as if afraid she'd disappear if he let go. "We need to get you back to your father before the situation gets any worse." "It's already worse," Elena said quietly. "Russo's been planning this for months. The kidnapping was just the opening move. He has evidence, fabricated but convincing, that you ordered it. Photos, recorded phone calls, the works. By now, my father's already mobilizing his men. Then we're about to have a war on our hands. Unless..." Elena looked between them, calculation in her eyes. Unless I tell him the truth, that you rescued me, that your wife risked her life to save me. Marcus shook his head. Your father won't believe you. He'll think we coerced you. He will if I show him proof. Elena held up her bound wrists, still trailing rope. I have Russo's men's DNA under my fingernails. I can identify them. And I have 2 witnesses, your wife and myself, who can testify that you weren't involved. That, in fact, you stopped it. Viviana felt Marcus's arm tighten around her. You'd do that? Testify against Russo? Russo killed my brother 3 years ago. Everyone knew it, but no one could prove it. Elena's voice went hard. If this gives me the chance to take him down, I'll do whatever it takes. The meeting happened at dawn, in the same restaurant where Marcus had once planned to confront Dominic Castellano under very different circumstances. Both families came armed, tense, ready for blood. Viviana stood beside Marcus, her shoulder bandaged, her palms wrapped in gauze, her face pale but determined. Dominic Castellano was a wall of a man, gray-haired and stone-faced, flanked by a dozen soldiers who looked ready to start shooting at the slightest provocation. When Elena walked in, escorted by Marcus, alive and whole and defiant, the entire room went silent. "Papa?" Elena said. Dominic's composure cracked. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling his daughter into his arms with a gentleness that seemed impossible from such a hard man. Elena. Grazie a Dio. We thought they said Volkov. Volkov saved me. Elena pulled back, her voice clear and strong. Russo's men took me. They were going to kill me and make it look like Marcus did it. Start a war that would destroy both our families and leave Russo to pick up the pieces. She gestured to Viviana. Mrs. Volkov jumped into a moving van to free me. We escaped together. Dominic's eyes moved to Viviana, and she felt the weight of his assessment. Then, slowly, he turned to Marcus. You saved my daughter. My wife saved your daughter, Marcus corrected. I just drove the car. I owe you a debt. You owe me nothing, but Russo needs to answer for this. Agreed. Dominic's expression went cold. A joint operation? A joint operation. The 2 men shook hands, and Viviana felt the tension in the room shift, transform from impending violence to something else. Alliance, unity, possibility. Antonio Russo was arrested 3 days later in a joint FBI police operation. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Elena's testimony, DNA evidence, the identities of his men. He'd spend the rest of his life in prison, and with him would go the threat that had hung over both families. Marcus and Viviana were in their home office when the news came through, curled together on the leather sofa while rain drummed against the windows. Marcus had barely let her out of his sight since the incident, and she hadn't minded. The nightmares still came sometimes, dreams of falling, of the road rushing up to meet her, of Marcus's face white with fear. Russo's finished, Marcus said, reading the message on his phone. Castellano sends his regards. Good. Viviana traced the line of his jaw with her fingertips. Does this mean things will be safer now? Safer? He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her bandaged palm. With you in my life? I doubt it. You have a talent for finding trouble. I learned from the best. You saved a life, Viviana. You risked everything, jumped into a moving vehicle with no plan, no weapons, no backup, to save someone you didn't even know. She needed help. Most people would have stayed in the car. His eyes were serious now, searching hers. You promised me you'd stay in the car. I lied, she smiled slightly. I told you I'm not good at being locked away for my own safety. I noticed. He pulled her closer, carefully avoiding her injured shoulder. You terrified me. When I saw you jump, when the van drove away with you inside. I've faced a lot of things in my life, Viviana. I've been shot at, stabbed, threatened by men who would have killed me without hesitation. But I've never been as scared as I was in that moment. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be careful. Be smart. Be the woman I married. Brave and reckless, and absolutely impossible to control. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. But remember that you're not alone anymore. That when you take risks, you're risking the most important thing in my world. You're risking my heart. Tears stung her eyes. I'll be more careful. I promise. I'm not asking you to change who you are, just to let me protect you when I can. To trust that I'll always come for you, no matter what. His thumb traced the edge of her bandage. Even if you insist on jumping into moving vehicles. Deal. She kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. As long as you remember that protection goes both ways, I'll always come for you too, Marcus. Always. I know, you proved that. He settled her more comfortably against his chest, one hand stroking her hair. Elena sent something, by the way. A thank you gift. What kind of gift? See for yourself. He handed her a small box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a bracelet, delicate silver links with a small charm in the shape of a bird in flight. Viviana turned it over and saw the inscription on the back. For the woman who taught me to fly. Thank you for my life. She told me something else, Marcus said quietly. When I called to confirm Russo's arrest, she said watching you jump into that van made her realize something about courage. That it's not about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. She said that? She did. And she's right. He took the bracelet, fastening it carefully around Viviana's wrist, the same wrist that had once been covered in bruises, that had worn long sleeves to hide the pain. You're the bravest person I know, Viviana Volkova. Braver than any soldier, any enforcer, any man who's ever worked for me. Because you choose courage every single day, even when you're scared, even when the odds are impossible. She looked down at the bracelet, at the bird caught forever in flight, and thought about the journey that had brought her here, from her father's hospital room to Marcus's office, from hiding bruises to wearing them as badges of survival, from being property to being a partner, from long sleeves to freedom. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. He pulled a blanket over them both, tucking her close. Now rest. Tomorrow we start planning how to keep you from jumping into any more moving vehicles. She laughed, the sound muffled against his chest. Good luck with that. I don't need luck. His voice rumbled under her ear, warm and certain. I have you, and that's better than any luck in the world. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city clean. Inside, wrapped in her husband's arms, wearing a bracelet from the woman she'd saved and bearing scars from the battle she'd fought, Viviana Volkova closed her eyes and smiled. She'd been so many things in her life, daughter, debtor, assistant, victim. But now, finally, she knew exactly what she was. She was home, she was loved, she was free, and she was exactly where she was meant to be.